waiting there, we are shout, Jah will be waiting there.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Valhalla Movement podcast. Here today, we are super blessed to have Charles Eisenstein, the writer of one of his most popular books, The Yoga of Eating and Sacred Economics, and about to release The World We All Believe is Possible in Our Hearts. Or did I massacre the title? I'm sorry. It was.
Yeah, you massacred it. Sorry.
Why don't you go ahead and talk about it then? Oh,
it's coming out today, actually. It's called The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible.
Right. The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. I remember that quote from when you wrote it in the book, Sacred Economics, and it resonated so well with everybody in our organization here at Valhalla that we actually even kind of put it in our mission statement. In fact, we did.
Yeah.
Because it's true. I mean, when you say something as truthful as, the world that we believe is possible in our hearts, it really, no one can deny that they believe in a world that's better than the one that we live in today.
Yeah, because you get glimpses of it. I don't know that much about Valhalla, but I'm sure that it wasn't like some guy sitting in his living room that just, rationally figured out what the perfect society would look like, but probably somebody had an experience that gave him a glimpse that awakened that heart knowing and began to, for me, knowledge and belief are two different things. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I know, and like deep down, I know that that life is a gift. I know that everything I do is significant. I know that if I live from the gift, I'll be okay. I know that the universe outside myself is intelligent and purposeful, but I don't really believe these things, or I only kind of half believe them, and I'm kind of, because I don't really always act from them. So I guess you didn't ask me this question, but
go ahead.
But yeah, if I get into this kind of speaker's smartass thing, you can just cut me off. But yeah,
you were talking about the difference between what you believe and what you know.
Yeah. So what one thing that we're all doing is we're all helping each other believe what we know. Because if without help, I start to think, yeah, maybe I'm crazy, and everybody else is going around talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and, Kim Kardashian's underpants or lack thereof, and everything's normal, everything's fine, and the world isn't supposed to be much more beautiful than what's been offered to me as normal. So I start to think maybe I'm crazy, or maybe I'm crazy for believing that it's really possible, and I've got to wake up from my idealism, my immaturity, my naivete, and get down to the grim business of life. There's just so many assaults that want to pull me back into that. And that's why I need people who can say, yeah, Charles, I've seen it too. I know it's possible too. I'll help you believe it if you help me believe it. And that's really what my writing's about. And I think communities like Valhalla are really important too, because they kind of create these incubators where you go and you immerse yourself in a community of other people who not just intellectually believe, but are living those beliefs.
Yeah, and I can't promote it enough. I highly recommend the process of incubating. It's and it works with anything, not just with creating a better tomorrow, but really just any type of objective. If you have a group of people surrounding the same objective and believing that it's possible, no matter how difficult or far-fetched it may be, let's say even if it's teleportation, I'm sure if you get a bunch of scientists in the same office working together in community, they'll figure it out years ahead of our time.
Yeah.
So, and I was wondering, are you going to be releasing your book for free to the public on webpage form like you did with Sacred Economics?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Right now, my website is being redone, so I'm gonna, when I get my website redone, I'm gonna do that. But I haven't gotten around to it yet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm I don't know if you can tell from the video, but I'm tired and busy, and I've been trying to.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Actually, in particular, what's it like in a day in the life of Charles Eisenstein?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, geez. I mean, either I'm traveling and speaking, which is pretty hectic. I mean, I pack it in. Often I'll give one talk or workshop every day over many, many days, and traveling from place to place, and when I'm home, I haven't even been doing that much writing, a little bit. And I, catch up. I have 4 kids, so I do stuff with them and cook, make sauerkraut, and yeah.
That's great. Last we spoke, I think you said you had 3 kids. Did you just have one recently, or?
Yeah, I've got now a baby. He's 9 months old.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. In case you don't remember, because like you said, you're constantly doing workshops and talks. We met at McGill University in Montreal about a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you did an interview with Jordan Lejuan, the creator of highexistence.com. And in that interview, I remember there was a question that was asked towards the end, and it was really, your response was really quite uplifting. And the question was, Charles, if you can speak to your 16-year-old self again, what would you tell him? And that was never aired. So
really?
I was just wondering if you would like to take a moment to answer that question.
What I would have said at that moment to my 16-year-old self might be different than what I would say now.
Right, yeah.
But so right now, I can only answer for right now.
Of course.
So there I am, 16 years old. I guess I would tell him a few things. One is that your silent protest against a wrongness in the world is valid and important, and please trust that. The real world is a lot bigger than what you've been offered as normal. And even though 1,000 voices are telling you otherwise, you've got to trust this sometimes lonely knowledge, and you will find other people who also know it. I tell them that life doesn't have to be hard, that goodness doesn't necessarily come through struggle, that you'll be carried. And the most important thing is to be awake and alert and to respond to what you're carried into. And I guess that, that 16-year-old was still somewhat emotionally dependent on the reward system of school and things like that. And I'd say that that's a fool's game, that those rewards lead you nowhere that you want to go. So feel free to ignore those and to love yourself without conditioning it on academic performance. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that would have been helpful. I mean, I would have shaken loose a little earlier than I did, I think, if I had someone that I respected tell me that.
That's really interesting. Wow. I definitely resonate with that. I mean, I went through the whole school process myself. If I'm not mistaken, you went to Yale. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you studied in mathematics?
Yeah, mathematics and philosophy.
And would you care to tell us, like, maybe one or two examples of what gives you the perspective you have today? What really shook you in Yale that just told you, this system of incentive where they grade us it's not going to lead me to where I want to go.
Well,
or what I want to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of followed our culturally prescribed road to knowledge, which is in its purest form is in mathematics and analytic philosophy. That you apprehend the world through reason and logic, and you apply those tools to evidence and experience, and you kind of reason out the way of the world. That's where the answers are supposed to be. In science, of which mathematics is the ground, and in philosophy. And so, I mean, I kind of liked both of those topics actually, and did pretty well. But when I think one key moment is when I read, as an upperclassman, I began reading articles in philosophy journals and stuff like that, and they were so the language was so specialized and abstruse and inaccessible. I was like, this cannot be it. It felt like all these really smart people had wandered into this labyrinth, and forgotten about the outside world, and it just seemed really sterile, And I don't think I could have articulated it very well back then, except in my kind of teenage vocabulary. Oh, this is bullshit, man. It was a turnoff, and other things were calling me. So it wasn't like I made a conscious decision not to participate in the program, but I just found myself as junior year, senior year went along, and all of my classmates were applying to grad school, law school, medical school, Wall Street, internships, all this kind of all this stuff. I just couldn't make myself do it. The days went by, I just wasn't into it. And just and maybe, there were moments where I felt a little bit guilty, like lazy, something's wrong with me, why aren't I getting with the program? But then I'd be like, fuck it, Yeah. And so it wasn't like I had some big epiphany. It was more like I had this inner wisdom, or this like inner mute rebellion, unconscious rebellion, that just wouldn't allow me to wholeheartedly participate. So, I graduated and I just left the country. I lived in Taiwan for 9 years and just pretty much dropped out of the program.
So did you complete it? Did you get your bachelor's degree?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I didn't quite have the courage to drop out before. I mean, I really started rejecting it more consciously as I entered my second half of my senior year. And at that point, I was like, I might as well finish it off, and I got a D in philosophy, and I mean, I only did what I wanted to do. And just kind of enjoyed myself. And boy, because I had been a promising philosophy student. I'd been kind of something of a mini superstar in some of the earlier classes, and I mean, I remember one of my professors was so disappointed in me that I was not taking it seriously.
That's incredible. I'm super curious as to what you did for 9 years in Taiwan.
Well, mostly I mean, I don't know what that question means.
Okay. Well, I mean, did you let's say, enlist in a monastery? Did you live in a hut on the?
No. I dabbled in this and that.
Okay.
I did translation for a living.
Okay.
I just kind of lived, Geez, I mean, for a few years I went to a lot of bars,
Right.
Went for hikes in the jungle, and I did go to a Taoist meditation center for a while. I never really got wrapped up in Buddhism or Taoism or martial arts. or Chinese medicine, but I had a little bit of, little contact with these things. And I did a lot of reading, especially after the first few years. I began, getting books, especially toward the end when Amazon appeared and I could order them and have them shipped over.
Right.
So I did a lot of the research that eventually turned into the Ascent of Humanity, starting in Taiwan.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, I'm not a really extraordinary person in terms of, having had mind-blowing experiences, or, near-death experiences, or done years of intense spiritual work, or, channeling ascended masters, or having overcome some, terrible hardship or trauma. Like nothing inspiring in the story of Charles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is good because it means that I do feel like I am like walking in new territory that I had no idea existed when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. And if I can get into this new territory, then so can everybody else who didn't have a near-death experience, overcome a childhood trauma, recover from cancer, or channel ascended masters. It's available to us right now. We're moving into it as a mass, whereas a few hundred years ago, maybe, or even a generation or two ago, it wasn't a mass consciousness. There were a few special people who entered what I call the territory of interbeing. But now it's not like that. It's not like we need a guru to lift ourselves up there. It's the water table is rising and it's gushing out of every spring.
Mm-hmm. That's a good metaphor. I definitely resonate with that. I mean, you don't need to have any like horrific or near-death experience or guru to enlighten you. You can just find it. And you said it's the territory of inner being.
Interdependence, interconnection.
Okay. Okay.
And I wouldn't say that you can find it actually, but when you look for it, it finds you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in thinking about all these ways of thinking and of solutions for a lot of the problems that we have in today's society, have you ever witnessed an eco-village?
I've visited quite a few eco-villages, yeah.
Okay. Have some in the U.S.? Like, which ones have you visited yourself? And what would you say about them? Would you say that they're a viable solution to a lot of the world's ills?
Well, I mean, they're not a solution in the sense that, everybody can leave the city and go to an eco-village. We have to also transform the places where people already live. And
absolutely, right.
Yeah.
We need to retrofit the cities and the urban areas.
Yeah.
But in terms of that particular, community and society living in an eco-village where they, recycle their own water and have renewable energy, they're still not living 100% off the grid. I mean, at least not most of them, but...
Yeah, who cares if they're not living 100% off the grid?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of eco-villages are pioneering the kinds of technologies and ways of life that our planet needs, especially in the West, where those ways of life have been almost forgotten. So yeah, I mean, I think eco-villages are really important. I mean, I think they will find, a lot of them find that there's like, you can't just set up your eco-village and minimize your ecological impact and live sustainably and then you've solved it. What happens is that you discover deeper and deeper levels in which you're still living the old story. And it might turn up I visited one, which will remain nameless right now, where it was all very sustainable and everything, but then you look into it and there are two social classes there. One kind of fairly well-off empty nesters who can afford to spend $200,000 or $300,000 to build an eco home down there, and then young people who kind of come in and provide the labor and usually leave within a year or two. So like there's something not right about that, something that is ultimately not sustainable, and that brings up a crisis, which is an invitation, an invitation deeper into the new territory. So either you accept that invitation, or you become kind of like one of these kind of cliche, wannabe eco-villages that think that they're doing something so special because they get to brag about their low carbon footprint and they're being off grid or whatever. But actually, it's just a bunch of people sitting around feeling superior and not really changing the world, because what does it matter if 50 or 100 people are using less fossil fuels? There's an eco-village has to have a mission beyond themselves, a mission beyond being good, beyond being perfect, beyond being better than other people. And if it doesn't have such a mission, eventually it'll fall apart under internal stresses. There has to be a unifying mission. There has to really have community. Like, community is formed from gifts that are necessary and important gifts. In other words, you have to be able to look around at the people around you and say, I need you, and you need me. Mm-hmm. So you can have community if you're in, like, say, a really difficult situation. Maybe there's a war or a natural disaster or something, something traumatic, and you need each other to survive. And you can have community that way. But if you're going to say, okay, in order to have community, we're going to pretend that we can't otherwise survive, and we're going to all get together and we're going to need each other, there's something inauthentic about that. Because in the back of your mind, you say, well, I could always just go get a job. I could leave here. I don't need to be here. Therefore, I don't really need you. So how do you have real community? How do you, without artificially rendering yourself helpless and dependent on each other, how do you form that mutual knowing of mutual need? You have to be committed to something that requires the joint gifts and efforts and cooperation of everybody involved. So then it's no longer, I need you in order to survive. It's, I need you because without your gifts, the thing that I'm committed to will not manifest. So often you'll have a lot of community in the early stages of an eco-village, but then at some point the buildings are built, the land is there, like then now what? Why are we here? Why are we together? There has to be a mission. And I think that there are some eco-villages that recognize that. And the ones that really last do have a mission beyond themselves. It may not be present at the beginning, but it's something that emerges.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say so. I can totally agree with what you're saying. I've seen them myself, and I have seen some who have a mission that's greater than themselves, to work for something that's greater than themselves, and just having this rationalized self-interest. What do you tell the person then? I have a cousin who thinks that there's no other way to make a quick buck than to go and work for the tar sands in Alberta. And as we all know, the tar sands produce some of the world's largest density of carbon emissions. It consumes the highest amount of fresh water, and essentially people are losing their health just by going to work there. And they come up with responses and say, well, it has to be done, and someone has to do the job, and it might as well be me if I have to make that money. What do you tell people in that circumstance to really strike them quickly, I guess, with truth?
I think that if you assault that person with logic, it won't work, usually. Unless they're in a place where they already want to change, then the logical argument can be their handle, something they can grab onto to pull themselves out of the water. But if they're not at that point, then a logical argument, it's easy to demolish the position that, well, if I don't do it, someone else will get that job, and it might as well be me. geez, if I don't pull the switch on the gas chamber, then someone else will do it,
Absolutely.
might as well, because I might as well do it and support my family and give some of the money to charity, et cetera, right? So like we recognize that that's a bogus argument. But it doesn't matter. People do not change their beliefs by being overcome with superior logic. So I think that environmental consciousness, ecological consciousness, comes through love, through beauty, through grief. And so I guess it would depend on the, exact relationship I have with that person, but I would try to point to those things. I would say, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, but don't you feel sad about all those trees being cut down? Like, don't you wish that there were another way? Or you could use strategic questions. Like you could say, probably on some level you'd rather be doing something that was beautiful to you. What would it take for that to happen? What would it take for you to like? There's probably some pain underneath there when you present them with you're destroying the planet with your job. It triggers that pain and makes them defensive. But because they feel attacked, and I know when I feel attacked, I get defensive and I become unable to process my pain and my grief and my fear. So what enables me to process those things and then to change is when I'm held in a space of total acceptance. So maybe in direct ways, you could do that with that person. You could, yeah, you see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, definitely. You speak to their heart and not to their mind.
Yeah. So if someone chooses a job like that, why do they choose that job? And what's the circumstances behind that? Or more generally, why do people make choices from a place of fear and control?
Because they're ultimately in fear, I would say.
Yeah. And they feel isolated, separate, alone, me versus the universe, an unfriendly world, a competitive world, a world where everyone's out to get me, maybe, a world where no one really cares, so I've got to take care of me and mine, a world of hostile, competing others, a world where I'm not safe. So anything that you do to rip the fabric of that worldview is going to turn them into people who no longer make choices from that place.
Very well said,
yeah.
Sounds like compassion is, like, once again, the solution.
Right, and the reason for compassion isn't because then you qualify as a nice person. It's because it's actually the only effective way to create lasting change. Because, we operate from a paradigm in our civilization that change happens through the exercise of force, and that the people who are supposedly benefiting from the tar sands, they're just selfish people. They're bad people, and they need to be overcome. If that were true, then tactics of blaming and shaming and fighting and all that would be the only effective and possible tactics, which is a recipe for despair. Because if we depend on overcoming the enemy by force, we're facing an enemy that has way more force than we do. The military-industrial complex, the surveillance state, the banking system. They have all the financial force, they have all the military force, they have the propaganda force, they have the media, they have everything. We're not going to win a contest of force. But in fact, these people they are not actually reaping the benefits. They are reaping, well, I mean, the benefits they are reaping are not real benefits. They're not what they really want. They're not what make human beings happy in this world. And we have to see that. We have to see that this isn't benefiting you either. It's not benefiting the 1% either. We want the world to be better for you too. And when we understand that, your friend, for example, is just running scared, then we can take other kinds of action that maybe bring about a change of heart. I don't think there's any other way.
Mm-hmm. I don't either.
Like, for example, you can show them how awesome and fun it is to live in a different way, which is why I think the revolution has to be fun and have an element of play and celebration woven through it.
Yeah, we're always told that celebration is a huge missing key to community. Sometimes we're so involved in accomplishing and completing tasks that we forget to celebrate once they're done. And that's a very essential point in the process of this change.
The Dalai Lama was asked, "What's the most important quality in a spiritual leader?" And you know what he said?
What did he say?
Cheerfulness.
Cheerfulness, amazing.
Yeah, and why? I don't know why, but I imagine that cheerfulness and joy and good humor is kind of an invitation. It says, this place where I'm at, you want to come in too, because it's really fun. It's really great. It's really a happy place to be. So I think that I know people like that, like who bring lots and lots of people into activist social work kind of movements, And I guess there's people who, guilt people into it as well. But I'm thinking of people who, it's not because they are necessarily great speakers or great writers or anything. It's that people want to be where they are, They want to be in that place. How is it that you're so fearless, that you're so happy, that you're so okay with yourself, that you are comfortable in your skin, that you are unperturbed by things that would be frightening or despair-inducing for me? I want some of that, and I think that is a much more powerful invitation than than most of the tactics that we use. For example, the tactic of logical force, or the tactic of you should be ashamed of yourself for contributing to the demise of our planet. What's wrong with you? You better get your act together and become responsible and become ethical. Otherwise, you are unworthy. You are despicable. That's a kind of force. It's a kind of psychological force, and it motivates. What it motivates is superficial changes that are just enough to allow that person to feel good about themselves again. But it doesn't motivate deep commitment. So I think that if you or I are in a place of kind of heaviness, darkness, despair, and we're kind of grimly telling people what to do, then we're not going to change anybody. We're only going to be speaking to the choir, and we're going to be dispiriting the choir and making the choir sing ugly music together, which will not draw anybody into the church.
Right.
Yeah.
What would you say? Give us a reason why. Give the public a reason why they should go out and purchase your book, which is being released today, the 5th of November.
Well, purpose of the book, ultimately, I guess I mentioned it at the beginning, it's to help to crystallize a new level of belief in what you already know. So it deals with a lot of things I've been talking about, things like hope and despair, breakdown, naivete, optimism, miracles, the technology of story, synchronicity, how to, like I talk about people who seem to have like this kind of extraordinary effectiveness. Where does that come from? How do you invite, probably everyone's experienced like these kind of moments of synchronicity and flow, maybe whole days or weeks or months where you don't know how to get from point A to point B, but you just go one step at a time, and it's like Indiana Jones crossing the chasm, and like something appears under his foot with every step, and like some larger order is carrying you. Like, why does that happen? How can we access that? So yeah, those are some of the themes in the book. I guess to directly answer your question, why should someone buy it or read it? I guess if I have to persuade you, then it's already too late. If I have to persuade you to read it, then I really don't even want you to read it. You know?
Okay. Well, I mean,
it's a book that carries a spirit. It carries a spirit
uh-huh.
that I'm kind of transmitting, you know, that I've received and that I'm passing on. Yeah.
Perfect. So I would just like to let everyone know that just like Sacred Economics, the book will be most likely available for free on the web eventually.
Yeah, when I get my website up, it'll probably take me a couple months to make it available. Although I'm also going to have an ebook that'll probably be there sooner. That is you decide the price. But I mean, you know, most people they'll end up buying it anyway on Amazon.
Right. I mean, as they should. If you have the extra cash, why not support a great writer like Charles Eisenstein, who pretty much devotes most of his time to just vocalize how we can view optimistically the problems in the world today and how we can solve them by using all of the themes and topics that we spoke about in this podcast. So, I mean, it was great talking to you, Charles. Would you like to wrap it up with one thing? You have a chance to say something to my 16-year-old sister who's always on 6 social media sites at the same time, and you want her to be more conscious. What do you say?
Well, gee, I don't know her personally.
Right, but think of a typical teenage girl who's really into fashion and takes those duck photos where they pucker their lips.
I'd say follow your urge toward fun and deepen that, and ask what is even more fun. And I'd say here's one thing I recently read it. I put it online. I think it's this Spanish intellectual. He's saying it's not that everybody believes in mainstream media. That's not why they're powerful. Mainstream media is not powerful because everybody believes them. What's happening is that actually almost nobody believes them, but everybody believes that everybody believes them. And more generally, we're in this kind of story that nobody really believes, everybody believes it. So what I would say to the 16-year-old, I'd say, actually, no one believes it. And if you don't believe it, you're not crazy. No one believes it, but they're just not saying it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charles. You're a great person, and we love having you here. So any chance you get to come by Montreal, give us a call, and we'll cater for you. We'll help you out. with anything.
Well, thank you, Lawrence.
No problem. Have a great one.
Yeah, thanks.